My dad wanted to move in after his wedding, but when I hesitated, they ditched me and vanished. So I changed the locks and left their stuff in the yard. I'm a 22-year-old woman, and I legally own the house I grew up in. My mom left it to me in her will when she passed away last year. She was only 47 and died suddenly from a stroke. It hit hard at first, but I've come to terms with it. My parents split when I was 7, and from then on, I lived half the month with my mom and the other half with my dad. I always felt a stronger connection to my mom. She just understood me in a way my dad never really did. My dad, who's now 50, was either caught up with work or distracted by whatever woman he was dating at the time. I honestly never felt like a priority to him, but I learned to live with it because I still had my mom in my corner. Right after I turned 18 and started college, my dad moved to Houston for a new job, which meant I barely saw him after that, mostly just around the holidays. 2 years ago, he surprised us by bringing his girlfriend Julia, who was 38 at the time, to Christmas dinner. She came with her 2 daughters, one was 18, the other 16, from a previous relationship with her high school boyfriend. They'd never gotten married and had broken up around 7 years before she met my dad. It really caught me off guard because Dad had never introduced any of his girlfriends to the family before. Still, we tried to be welcoming. We did our best to make Julia and her girls feel at home, and the evening turned out pretty well. Everyone seemed to get along. After that, whenever I called my dad, Julia would usually hop on the phone to say hi and was always super sweet. Her daughters were quiet and kept to themselves, but overall, things felt pretty comfortable. When my mom passed, I found out she had already arranged everything in her will years earlier, right after I turned 18. She was the type to plan for even the darkest possibilities, so everything was sorted. That's how I ended up inheriting the house. Since I had just graduated, I figured I'd stay put for a while, look for a local job, and spend some time in the house that felt most like home. It was my safe space, and I wasn't ready to leave it behind. My dad, though, didn't take the news of the will too well. He and Julia were kind and supportive during the funeral, but I could tell my dad was a little bitter once he realized he wasn't getting the house back. This was the same house he and my mom had bought together when they first got married. But after the divorce, she kept the house, and he walked away without having to pay alimony, which, honestly, seemed fair to me. My mom gave up her career to raise me, so getting the house in return made sense. She later built her life back up with help from her parents and managed to be both a fantastic mom and a strong provider. So when Dad acted bothered about not getting the house, I didn't feel sorry for him. He already got plenty. Mom even left him all her wedding jewelry and the gifts he gave her over the years. That should have been enough. A few weeks after the funeral, Dad and Julia went back to Houston, and I stayed in the house alone. Fast forward 6 months, Dad calls to say he and Julia are engaged and they're planning to get married here, in my hometown. He said they'd be arriving soon and asked if they could all stay at my place leading up to the wedding. The logic was that my house had enough rooms, hotels were expensive, and Julia's daughters were homeschooled, so school wasn't an issue. I said yes. Honestly, I was tired of being alone, and I actually liked Julia, so I didn't see a problem with it. Dad also promised to help out with the bills, which made it an even easier decision. So they moved in about a month ago, and for the first time in a while, I wasn't feeling lonely. It was nice having people around again. I even started worrying about how empty the house would feel once they left. But then, 2 weeks ago, just 3 days before the wedding, Dad pulled me aside and asked if I'd consider letting them live here permanently. I was blindsided. He told me part of the reason for coming here early was to help me get used to the idea of having a family around again. He didn't like the thought of me living alone, and now that things seemed to be going well, he wanted to make it official. A part of me wanted to say yes right then. But I couldn't forget how he acted when he found out the house wasn't his. As much as I liked the idea of not being alone anymore, I didn't want to make a rushed decision based on emotion. They'd only been living with me for a month, and that wasn't enough time to really know how things would go long term. So I told him I needed time to think and that I'd give him an answer after the wedding. He didn't look thrilled about it, but he didn't argue either. 10 days ago, they got married, and the wedding was amazing. We all had a great time, and they planned to stick around for a couple more days before heading back to Houston. I was actually going to tell them that I decided to say yes, that they could stay, but I never got the chance. 2 days after the wedding, I woke up to an empty house. They were gone. No heads up, no goodbye. Just gone. But their stuff was still all over the place. I started calling around, freaking out a little when no one picked up. Hours passed with no response. Finally, around noon, Julia casually texted me to say they'd left for their honeymoon and would be gone for a week. I was stunned. They hadn't even told me they were leaving. I won't lie, being left out of their honeymoon plans really stung. I wasn't expecting an invite or anything fancy, but the fact that no one even thought to tell me they were leaving? That felt like a slap in the face. Still, I didn't want to come off as petty, so I tried to keep things calm and just asked Julia why no one had said anything. Her response? Some half-baked excuse about how they forgot to mention it. Then she told me not to worry because they'd be back soon, like that was supposed to make it better. I told her that wasn't the point. What bothered me wasn't that they went on vacation, it was that they just left without a single word or goodbye. It was straight up disrespectful. I asked to speak to my dad, but suddenly her tone flipped. The same woman who used to act all sweet and warm suddenly turned cold and snippy. She said he was busy and didn't have time to talk to me. I still tried to be polite and asked her to just let me know when he had a moment to talk, simple as that. But she wasn't having it. Out of nowhere, she transformed into the classic evil stepmom type. She told me not to bother them because Dad would be busy for the next few days even though I hadn't brought it up again. Then she accused me of being hysterical over nothing and reminded me, rather condescendingly, that I wasn't a kid anymore. According to her, my dad had a new family now and I needed to get over it. And just to really drive the knife in, she said I should have the house cleaned up before they came back. That was it for me. I don't know who she thought she was dealing with, but it sure as hell wasn't someone who was going to be treated like a maid in her own home. She hung up right after that, and I was furious. The kind of furious where your blood feels hot in your veins. I didn't call my dad after that. I couldn't even look at my phone without feeling sick. Thank God I hadn't said yes to them moving in permanently. Seeing her true colors was the only warning I needed. So I did what I had to do. I tossed all their stuff into a few beat-up cardboard boxes, didn't bother folding or organizing a thing, and left everything in the front yard. If they wanted their things, they could come get them. I didn't care what happened to any of it. That stuff didn't belong to me, and neither did they, not in my life and certainly not in my house. After that, I tried to get back to normal. I told myself not to dwell on the betrayal, even though it cut deep. Yesterday, they finally got back from their honeymoon. Thankfully, I was at work when they arrived and saw their stuff sitting outside. I had already changed the locks, too, just in case. Later that day, I got a call from my dad, and he was livid. He said I was overreacting, acting like a spoiled brat, and that leaving me behind without notice wasn't a big deal. Apparently, in their minds, ditching me wasn't worth getting upset about. I told him straight up, take your boxes and get off my property. And if I saw any of them here when I got home, I'd call the cops. He cursed at me and hung up, but I had work to get back to and wasn't about to waste my energy on him. By the time I got home, the yard was cleared out. They'd taken everything and left. I thought that was the end of it. I really hoped it was. But then, around midnight, I got another call, this time from Dad again, saying Julia wanted to talk. She got on the phone and gave me this rehearsed little apology, saying she was sorry for how she spoke to me and that she wanted a second chance. She didn't want things to end on bad terms over something so silly. I told her to save it. I wasn't buying the act. I told her to leave me alone. I didn't need fake apologies from someone who clearly didn't respect me. If she truly felt bad, she would have apologized right after that first call or during the trip. But no, she waited until I kicked them out and shut the door for good. That's not regret. That's damage control. My dad isn't sorry either. He just realized I wasn't going to cave, so now he's trying the guilt trip route. He started going on about how I was being heartless by not letting him move back into the house where he said he'd made his happiest memories with my mom. He promised to split all the bills again, like that was supposed to change anything. He claimed that being in the house made him feel close to her and that Julia had just been in a bad mood that day. He even threw in that her kids missed me and wanted to come back too, like that would soften me up. But I wasn't falling for it. I've seen enough. I know my dad's had his eyes on this house since the divorce, and now that I've seen who Julia really is, I don't want either of them here. So I told him no, I wasn't changing my mind, and they could go back to their own home. That's when he broke down on the phone, crying and saying I was the most selfish daughter he'd ever had. He said I was cruel for not letting him live in the house that meant so much to him, all because of a petty argument I had with his new wife and because they didn't include me in their honeymoon. Which, let's be real, wasn't even the main reason I was upset. Apparently, I'm heartless, ungrateful, and my mom would have hated the ugly side of me. At least, that's what he claimed. Update 1: reading through the comments on my original post was definitely a wake-up call. Some people were unnecessarily harsh, but I got the message loud and clear. Most of you were right, I needed to stick to my decision and not let them come back. And I didn't. Because honestly, my dad doesn't deserve it. He's been consistently selfish and dismissive, and I'd had enough of it. Things started off fine, he and Julia were sweet to me at first. But once I told him I needed more time to decide, it was like a switch flipped. The kindness ran out, and the manipulation kicked in. They thought they could pressure me or guilt me into letting them stay, but I'm not that weak. I'd rather be alone than surround myself with people who don't truly care about me. Looking back, I should have trusted my gut from the moment I saw how irritated Dad was when he realized I inherited the house. That should have been my first clue about where their priorities really were. As for Julia, I'm honestly glad she lost her temper and showed her true self. If she hadn't, I might have welcomed them back, and who knows how much worse things could have gotten. We could have played pretend as one big happy family, but I'm not playing anymore. I've been lonely. I've missed my mom. My grandparents are all gone. I wanted a family so badly that I ignored all the red flags. But not anymore. These people aren't the family I need, and I'm grateful I figured that out before it was too late. It's been a few days since they left, but my dad keeps calling. I haven't answered. He's texting too, but I'm done responding. I've said all I need to say. My dad seems to think I owe him one more chance to make things right. But the truth is, they already had their chance and they blew it. If I give them another shot, I know how it'll end. It'll only backfire on me, and I'll be the one left picking up the pieces. So really, what would be the point? I do feel guilty sometimes for being this cold toward my own father, but honestly, what choice do I have? Actions have consequences. He never really put in the effort with me when it counted, so he doesn't get to complain now that I'm making decisions without prioritizing his feelings. He never once prioritized mine. Update 2. So it turns out my dad's not just persistent, he's desperate. And now I know why. He didn't actually take a break from work like he said he did. The truth is, he was fired a couple of months before the wedding. He'd been getting by on his savings, which were decent at the time. But between that over-the-top wedding and a fancy honeymoon, the money's dried up. And now, he finally told Julia the truth, that they can't afford to go back to Houston, and he can't even cover rent. Julia had no idea until recently. That's why she suddenly started playing nice and apologized. Not because she felt bad, because she found out the truth. I was right about her all along. She's as fake as it gets. But in a way, that's probably the kind of partner my dad deserves. He reached out again today and asked if they could crash at my place for just a few days, just until he found a job that paid well enough to move out. I said absolutely not. They were nasty to me, and I refused to let that energy back into my home. He's an adult. He should have thought all this through before blowing his savings on a wedding and a trip he couldn't afford. It's not my job to clean up after him, and I'm not going to feel bad for choosing myself over him. He made those decisions. He ignored his responsibilities. That's on him. I texted him back and explained all this, politely, even. I didn't want it to sound like I was mocking his situation. But of course, he took it that way. He fired back that I'd suffer for what I was doing to him. I didn't even respond. What would be the point? No matter what I say, he'll twist it into something else. It's easier now to just stay quiet and let him stew in his own mess. It's not my burden to carry. Update 3 is so, my dad finally decided to leave the city. But of course, he couldn't just go quietly. That wouldn't be his style or Julia's. Instead, they turned it into a grand announcement. I hadn't spoken to him in about 3 weeks, and he hadn't tried to check in with me either. But today, both he and Julia sent me messages letting me know, rather smugly, that her ex-boyfriend had offered to fly them all back home. Apparently, he had some sudden change of heart and decided he wanted to reconnect with his daughters. Julia has full custody, and her ex always paid child support, but he never really made the time to be a dad. It sounds like he finally got fed up watching them struggle and offered to help out. Honestly, it's probably for the best, at least the girls have someone stepping up, even if it's late. They didn't tell me the whole story, but I put the pieces together. A couple of hours after their message, they posted a picture of the girls online with Lucky Charms in the caption and a 4-leaf clover sticker. I don't need a play-by-play, I know Julia well enough by now to know she probably worked her magic to make it happen. I have no clue what exactly went down between her and the ex, but I'm just relieved they're out of my life. That's what matters most. I've read stories here about people with truly unhinged families, and honestly, I realize now that I got off easy in comparison. As for my dad, he cares too much about his reputation to ever try something reckless. And he knows full well that I wouldn't hesitate to call the police if he crossed a line. I've had some basic self-defense training, and I'm not scared of him anymore. Now that they're gone, I don't even have a reason to think about them. That chapter is closed. Finally. Yeah, I still get lonely sometimes. I miss my mom. I miss having family. But instead of sitting with that loneliness, I've started leaning on my friends more. I'd shut everyone out after Mom died, and I didn't even realize how isolated I'd become until I started reading through comments on my story. It's going to take time, but I'm trying to rebuild. I've got a steady job, a solid income, and a home that's truly mine. That's more than most people my age can say. And I'm beyond grateful to my mom for everything she left me, not just the house, but the strength to stand on my own. I have friends who care about me. And really, what else does a person need? And hey, if I ever find myself in trouble again, I know I can always come back here. The people of Reddit don't hold back, but they've got my back. And that means a lot.